Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 is nothing short of massive. This movie really turns up the dial on the words epic and spectacle.
Let me fight beside you.
Villeneuve's bold approach, combined with a top-notch team behind the scenes, really makes this movie stand out, even topping its Oscar-winning predecessor. Even if you have watched Dune 2, there's a whole lot more to uncover, like what got cut, any hidden scenes, and other cool facts you might not know. In this video, we're diving deep into all that stuff, so make sure you stick with us until the end of this video. We're going to cover everything you need to know about Dune Part 2.
He has the real control of it.
And maybe even some surprises along the way. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Alright, the first hidden gem in Dune Part 2 that you might not have caught is about the insane coincidence that happened during the filming. You know the epic opening battle scene where the Fremen face off against the Harkonnen soldiers, set during a real solar eclipse? While they were shooting that very scene, the cast and crew actually witnessed a real-life solar eclipse on October 25th, 2022. Yeah, a real eclipse on the very day they were filming a scene about an eclipse.
Never stand with your back towards the open. How many times do I have to tell you that?
Talk about the universe lining things up perfectly. Cinematographer Greg Fraser didn't miss a beat. He captured this once-in-a-lifetime shot, and that very footage ended up in the final cut of the movie, giving us those jaw-dropping orange-tinted visuals. But since the Dune saga tells us Arrakis has 2 moons, the visual effect wizards led by Paul Lambert went the extra mile and added a second moon to the eclipse footage, keeping it true to the lore. Moving forward, next thing you'd be surprised to know is the baby sandworm was a real thing. You know, the baby sandworm that appears in the Southern Fremen Maker's Temple wasn't a computer-generated image. Nope, they went old school with it. Instead of relying on CGI, the filmmakers used practical effects to bring this critter to life, specifically a puppet. Now, creating this baby worm wasn't a walk in the park. The team faced a massive challenge, making it move realistically through the sand. According to leaks, they built the worm from 8 balls connected by a chain. To get it to squirm under the sand, they ran it on 2 sets of tracks, one for its circular movements, and another for its straight path towards the Maker Keeper. This behind-the-scenes effort really shows the lengths they went to keep things feeling real and tactile in the movie. Next, we've got something that you might have missed or not fully grasped, because it wasn't really there in the movie. What happened after Jammis's death? Remember when Paul took down Jammis at the end of the first Dune? That event carried over into the sequel, but there's a huge part of the story that got left behind. In the original book, after Paul wins that fight, he's supposed to take care of Jammis's wife and kids. That's how things roll in Fremen culture. Defeating someone in this manner means you're now responsible for their family. In the books, Jammis's wife Hera becomes a significant character as she turns into Paul's servant, sparking an important new relationship. But in Dune Part 2, Hera and this aspect of the Fremen culture don't make the cut. The movie skips over this detail entirely. This piece of the puzzle could have added a whole new dimension to Paul's character and the world of Arrakis. Next up is something about a key character who simply vanished. Where is Thufir Hawat? Thufir Hawat, the brainy mentat of House Atreides, is nowhere to be found in Dune 2. If you watched the first movie and were waiting to see what happens to him next, you might have been a bit puzzled. In the book, Thufir survives the brutal attack by the Harkonnens on Arrakis and ends up in quite the twisty situation. He starts working for Baron Harkonnen and gets deep into some major behind-the-scenes games, even hunting for the mysterious Muad'Dib, who turns out to be Paul. Thufir's storyline in the novel is intense. He ends up refusing to kill Paul and pays a steep price for it. But in Dune Part 2, this whole subplot is completely dropped. They skipped all of Thufir's espionage, his internal conflicts, and his dramatic final moments. It's a significant chunk of the story that got left on the cutting room floor. It's definitely a missing piece that could have added another layer of intrigue and drama to the whole saga. Alright, up next is something that might have been a surprise for those who know the story well. What happened to Paul and Chani's first son? In the sequel, we get to see more of Paul and Chani's relationship, which is definitely a highlight. But here's a major plot point that the movie completely skips over: their firstborn child, Leto II. In the book, after being together for 2 years, Chani and Paul have a son. But tragedy hits when Leto II dies as an infant during a brutal attack on their Fremen CH. This part of the story adds so much depth to both Paul and Chani's characters, showing their joy turned to heartbreaking loss. It's a huge moment that shapes their futures and their actions. Yet in the movie, this whole storyline is left out. Missing this bit in the movie kind of leaves a gap, especially if you're looking for that emotional depth and the personal stakes that drive Paul and Chani. Now, here's a twist in Dune Part 2 that might have left fans of the book a bit puzzled. Chani doesn't leave at the end of Dune. In the movie, how Chani's story wraps up is a pretty big departure from the books. After Paul climbs up the ranks to become emperor and drops the bombshell about marrying Irulan, Chani is not having any of it. She storms out, super upset, and the last we see of her, she's calling for a sandworm in the deserts of Arrakis. The vibe we get is that she feels totally betrayed by Paul. She has had it with his choices, the whole prophecy thing, and she might just ditch Muad'Dib for a simpler life out there in the dunes. This ending for Chani is a stark contrast to what Frank Herbert wrote. In the book, although Chani is definitely hurt by Paul's decision to marry someone else, she gets the bigger picture. She knows the marriage to Irulan is just a political move and nothing more. Despite her pain, she sticks by Paul, understanding her role as his concubine, which still means that she's treated like his true wife. Another hidden fact that might catch you off guard is that Paul doesn't kill Baron Harkonnen in the original story. In the movie, there's a pretty intense moment where Paul Atreides takes out his grandfather, Baron Harkonnen. Near the end of the movie, Paul storms into a meeting between House Harkonnen and the Emperor, and just takes down the Baron. Then, to add a bit of insult to injury, he has the Baron's body dumped in the desert to be eaten by bugs. It's a powerful scene that definitely sends a message. But in Frank Herbert's original story, it's actually Alia Atreides, Paul's sister, who kills the Baron. Paul's version in the movie is way more direct and adds this whole extra layer of disrespect by how he disposes of the Baron's body. This change shakes things up quite a bit, showing Paul in a more aggressive and vengeful light than how he's portrayed in the books. Alright, that wraps up our deep dive into the background, hidden scenes, and the intriguing differences between Dune Part 2 and the books. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more secrets, breakdowns, and facts coming your way, and you won't want to miss out. Subscribe to stay in the loop with all of our latest videos. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one.